The jungle on Viridia Prime breathed like a living thing. Thick, wet air clung to everything, heavy with the scent of rotting leaves and something sharp, something almost metallic. Trees taller than skyscrapers stretched into the bruised purple sky, their branches tangled like the fingers of sleeping giants. Vines hung like nooses. Strange insects buzzed in swarms that shimmered like oil on water. It was beautiful. It was deadly. Hidden beneath a moss-covered outcrop, half-sunk in black mud, sat the Iron Sparrow. Once a proud mid-range freighter, now it was a broken shell. One engine was gone, torn off during the orbital strike 3 weeks ago. Its hull was scorched and pitted, patched with scrap metal and sealed with emergency foam that bubbled like pus. Solar panels lay shattered. Antennae bent like broken bones inside. The air was thick with sweat, fear, and the tang of recycled oxygen running low. Captain Elias Rourke leaned over the comms console, his knuckles white. He'd been trying to raise anyone for days. The main array was dead. All he had left was the emergency short-range burst transmitter, powered by jury-rigged batteries from the ship's medbay. "Come on," he muttered, his voice rough from thirst. Just one ping. One damn ping. He tapped the transmit button. Again. And again. Static answered him. Always static dot behind him. The rest of the crew moved like ghosts. Myra Chun, the engineer, sat cross-legged on the floor, her hands buried in the guts of a broken oxygen recycler. Her dark hair was matted with grease, her eyes bloodshot but sharp. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. They all knew the truth. They were stranded. Outside, the war had already ended. The Viridian hegemony tall, silver-skinned aliens with eyes like polished obsidian had swept through the Viridia system like a cold wind. Their ships were sleek, silent, and terrifyingly efficient. They didn't scream or rage. They simply arrived, announced their claim in calm, measured tones, and reduced resistance to ash with orbital lances that cut through steel like paper. The native Viridians, gentle, plant-like beings who communicated through bioluminescent pulses, had surrendered within hours. They had no weapons, no warships, no concept of conquest. The hegemony called it order through clarity. The humans called it slaughter. The Iron Sparrow had been caught in the crossfire during its routine cargo run. A lucky shot or unlucky had knocked them out of orbit. They'd crash-landed deep in the jungles before the hegemony could finish them off. Since then, they'd stayed silent, hiding, surviving on ration bars, rainwater, and the occasional lizard-like creature Myra insisted wasn't poisonous. It probably was. Rourke wiped his face with a rag that was more dirt than cloth. He stared at the cracked screen of the comms unit. "We're running out of time," he said, not to anyone in particular. "We always are," Myra replied, finally looking up. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly as she twisted a wire. O2 levels dropped below 15% in 12 hours. Maybe less if the filters give out. Rourke nodded. He knew. But saying it out loud made it real. There were 5 of them left. 2 had died in the crash. 1 bled out from shrapnel wounds before they could seal the hull breach. Another vanished during a water run swallowed by the jungle or taken by something that moved in the dark. No one knew. No one talked about it. Now. Only Rourke, Mira, Jax, their medic, currently asleep in the corner, wrapped in a thermal blanket. Tanya, the youngest, barely 20, who hadn't stopped shaking since day 1. And old Doc Hoffel, the ship's botanist. Now their last hope for edible plants remained. Rourke stood and walked to the broken viewport. Through the cracks in the reinforced glass, he saw the sky. Not stars. Not tonight. Instead, the slow, silent passage of hegemony patrol drones, sleek black ovals that glided like sharks through the upper atmosphere. They weren't searching. Not really. They were just watching, making sure nothing moved, making sure nothing resisted. The war was over. The hegemony had won, and Earth hadn't lifted a finger. Why would they? Humanity wasn't part of this system. Viridia Prime was neutral territory, a trade hub. The Iron Sparrow was just a civilian vessel, unarmed, unimportant. Back home, people were probably drinking synth coffee and watching holodramas, completely unaware that 5 of their own were dying in a jungle on the edge of known space. Rourke clenched his jaw. He'd served 10 years in the Soul Defense Corps before going freelance. He'd seen things, done things. But this waiting to suffocate while conquerors floated above like gods, this was worse than any battlefield. He turned back to the comms. "One last try," he said. Myra didn't argue. She knew as well as he did that this was their only shot. Rourke rewired the transmitter directly into the ship's backup power cell. It wasn't meant to handle the load. Sparks flew. The lights flickered. Tanya whimpered. "Just give me a minute," Myra said, crawling over. She adjusted a capacitor with her teeth, then jammed it into place. "It'll hold. For 30 seconds, maybe?" Rourke nodded. He typed the message with slow, deliberate fingers. Simple, clear, no poetry. "No begging SOS. Human vessel Iron Sparrow. Viridia Prime. Survivors aboard. Hostile forces active. Please respond. Coordinates attached." He hit send. The transmitter whined like a dying animal. A red light blinked once, twice, then went dark. Silence. Rourke slumped against the console. His hands shook now. Outside. The jungle hummed. The drones kept their slow, endless circles. No one answered. Mira put a hand on his shoulder. "We tried." Rourke didn't speak. He just looked at the dead screen, then at his crew, exhausted, starving, scared, but still alive. Still fighting, even if just by breathing. Then, something changed. A soft beep. They all froze. The comms unit, it was supposed to be dead, flickered. A single green light pulsed weakly. Rourke lunged forward. "What the?" Mira checked the wiring. It shouldn't be. Another beep. Stronger this time. The screen lit up with jagged lines of static, then cleared for a fraction of a second. A voice crackling, distant, almost drowned in noise spoke one word. "Sparrow." Rourke's heart stopped. He grabbed the mic. "This is Captain Elias Rourke of the Iron Sparrow. Do you copy? Over." Silence again. Then, clearer this time. "Iron Sparrow, this is Deep Station Theta. Signal weak. Repeat your status." Relief hit Rourke like a physical blow. He almost laughed. "Survivors, 5 of us. Hegemony forces occupied Viridia Prime. We're hidden but low on air and supplies. Coordinates sent." The voice on the other end paused. Then came a new tone, sharper, urgent. "Copy that, Sparrow. Hold position. Do not transmit again. We're relaying your signal. Help is coming." The line went dead, but it didn't matter. They'd been heard. Myra let out a shaky breath. Tanya started crying quiet, grateful tears. Even Doc Hoffel cracked a smile. Rourke leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He didn't know who Deep Station Theta was. He didn't know if help meant a rescue ship or just a data packet logged for future investigation. But someone somewhere knew they were alive, and in the silent, watchful dark of Viridia Prime. That was enough, for now. Above them, the hegemony drones continued their patrols, blind to the tiny spark of hope flickering in the jungle below. They thought the war was over. They thought the system was theirs. They didn't know that across the void, in the cold silence between stars, something ancient and terrible had just opened its eyes, and it was listening. Far from Viridia Prime, Beyond the bright swirl of the galaxy's arm, past the rings of dead comets and silent asteroids, sat a listening post. It was small, dark, and old so old that most maps didn't show it. Its name was Deep Station Theta. It had no weapons, no crew to speak of, just two scientists, a half asleep AI, and rows of deep space antennas that never stopped listening. One of those antennas caught the faint SOS from the Iron Sparrow. It was weak, broken, almost lost in cosmic noise. But the AI, trained to recognize human emergency signals, flagged it instantly. The station's senior tech, Lyra Nunez, was drinking recycled coffee when the alert flashed red on her screen. She blinked, thinking it was a glitch. But then she saw the origin point, Viridia Prime, and the sender, ID, Iron Sparrow, a civilian freighter registered under Sol Terran Authority. Her hands moved fast. She boosted the signal, cleaned the noise, and played the voice clip. Survivors. 5 of us. Hegemony forces occupied Viridia Prime. Lyra's blood went cold. The Viridian hegemony. Cold, cruel, and powerful. And now they had humans in their grip. She didn't hesitate. She hit the priority override. The message wasn't routed to Earth's civilian networks or trade councils. It went straight to a secure channel buried under layers of encryption one that hadn't been used in 40 years. Article Sigma. The signal shot across light years, jumping from relay station to relay station, each one older than the last, each one hidden in the dark corners of space. It reached the edge of Sol System in under 3 hours. There, in a bunker deep beneath the ice of Europa, a single red light began to blink. Admiral Kalen Voss was sleeping when the alarm sounded. Not in a bed, in a cryo-recovery pod. His body was still healing from the last border skirmish, his left arm replaced with a black alloy limb that hummed softly when he moved it. He'd been retired for 6 years. Officially, he didn't exist. Unofficially, he was the last keeper of the Wolves. The Wolves weren't a normal fleet. They were made of ships that shouldn't be flying, crews that shouldn't still be alive, and rules that said, protect your own no matter the cost. They were humanity's shadow force, born in the blood-soaked days of the Scourge Wars. When alien hordes tried to wipe out Earth, the Wolves fought back, not with fancy tactics or clean victories, but with fire, fury, and a kind of madness that made even hardened warriors flinch. When the Article Sigma alert reached Voss, he didn't ask questions. He didn't call a meeting. He simply opened his eyes, sat up, and said one word: wake them. Across the Sol System, dormant ships stirred. On Mars, in buried dry docks under the rust-red sands, power cells crackled to life inside hulking destroyers. On Titan, methane-fueled engines rumbled beneath ice-covered hangars as corvettes uncloaked from decades of silence. In the Uric Cloud, far beyond Pluto, massive carriers older than most star charts rotated their turrets and charged their weapons. Crews responded too. Men and women who'd hung up their uniforms, opened bakeries, taught school, or vanished into the wilds of Earth's reclaimed forests. They heard the call. Old neural implants buzzed in their skulls. Secret pings lit up on hidden wrist devices. Some smiled. Some cried. All of them moved, because Article Sigma meant only one thing. A human life was in danger beyond Earth's reach. And no one was left behind. Admiral Voss stood on the bridge of the Uns Persephone, his flagship. It was scarred from 100 battles, its hull patched with metal from enemy ships it had torn apart. Around him, officers strapped themselves in. Pilots ran diagnostics. Engineers flooded reactors with volatile plasma cores. Status? Voss asked, his voice rough but calm. Fleet readiness at 82%, said Commander Lin, his second-in-command. She'd lost an eye in the Belt riots and replaced it with a targeting scope that glowed faintly blue. The Rook, Viper, and Marauder are still waking up their AI cores, but they'll join us in Slipstream. Voss nodded. Good enough. He looked out the main viewport. Stars glittered in the endless black. Beautiful, peaceful. But Voss knew better. Space wasn't peaceful. It was a graveyard full of bones and broken promises. And now, the hegemony had stepped on something they shouldn't have. Plot course for Viridia Prime, he ordered. Maximum burn. We slipstream in 12 hours. Aye, Admiral. As the fleet powered up, news began to leak not through official channels, but through whispers in ports, coded messages in cargo logs, an old war chant sung in back alley bars on Luna. The wolves were back. On Earth, people stopped what they were doing. A dockworker in Jakarta paused mid-lift. A teacher in Reykjavik stared out the window. A child in New Lagos asked her mother, "Are the Deathworlders real?" Her mother just nodded, eyes wet, because everyone knew the stories. How humans were called Deathworlders by aliens who first met them. How Earth's gravity, storms, diseases, and predators made its people impossibly tough. How humans didn't just survive chaos, they thrived in it. How they laughed in the face of death, fought when all hope was gone, and never, ever surrendered. Most thought those days were over. That humanity had grown soft, safe, civilized. But the SOS from the Iron Sparrow proved otherwise. And now, the wolves were coming. Back on the Persephone, Voss stood alone in the war room. Holograms showed fleet positions, enemy data, and the last known location of the Iron Sparrow. He studied the Viridian hegemony's known tactics, orderly, efficient, emotionless. They valued control above all. They didn't understand chaos. They didn't understand humans. Voss allowed himself a small smile. Let them think the war is over, he murmured. Let them feel safe. He tapped a button. A new order went out to every ship in the fleet. No rules. No limits. Bring them home or burn the sky trying. Outside, engines roared to full power. The Persephone's hull groaned as it turned toward the slipstream gate. Behind it, over 200 warships formed up, silent, deadly, and filled with people who remembered what it meant to be human. On the bridge, Commander Lin handed Voss a flask. He took a sip. It was water, not alcohol. They had a job to do. Do you think they know what's coming? Lin asked. Watching the stars blur as slipstream engaged, Voss looked at the image of Captain Rourke pulled from the SOS transmission, and then at the faces of his crew. Tired, scared, but still fighting. No, he said, but they will. And with that, the Deathworlders fleet vanished into the void. Faster than light, hotter than fire, and louder than thunder. The galaxy had forgotten what humanity was capable of. It wouldn't for long. High Overseer Zirak stood on the command deck of the Sovereign Will, the flagship of the Viridian hegemony's 9th Conquest Fleet. Around him, the bridge was silent, except for the soft hum of cooling vents and the gentle tap of crystalline datapads. Everything was clean, ordered, perfect. Outside the massive viewport, Viridia Prime hung in space like a green jewel. Its atmosphere shimmered softly under the light of its twin suns. Below, hegemony landing craft moved in neat grids, harvesting rare minerals, cataloging native flora, and dismantling old defense towers with surgical precision. The war had ended 3 weeks ago. Resistance had been minimal. The native species had bowed without a fight. It was, by all measures, a flawless victory. Zirak allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. He had led this campaign with flawless logic. No waste, no chaos, no unnecessary loss. The Hegemony Council would surely promote him, perhaps even grant him a seat on the High Conclave. He turned to his second, Overseer Varen. Begin final data purge of orbital archives. Once complete, we depart for the Epsilon Cluster. The Krell Rebellion requires our attention. Vion bowed slightly. Yes, Overseer. All systems report nominal. No anomalies detected in the sector. Zirak nodded. He believed it. The sector was empty, quiet, dead. What he did not know was that, just beyond the edge of the system, space itself was tearing open. It began as a ripple, just a flicker in the long-range sensors. A distortion. A heat bloom where none should be. Overseer, a junior analyst said, voice tight. We are detecting something. At the system's outer rim. Zirak didn't turn. Define something. It's a slipstream wake. Massive. Unidentified. Zirak frowned. Slipstream travel was common, but no known power in this region dared approach a hegemony-controlled system without clearance. And even then, they would hail first. Announce themselves. Follow protocol. This is likely a sensor ghost, Zirak said. Or debris from the old Viridian fleet. But the analyst didn't relax. Signal is growing. Fast. Too fast. It's not debris. Before Zirak could respond, the main screen lit up with raw data. Then, images. Hundreds of ships. No thousands of signatures. Impossible. The hegemony fleet had swept this region clean. There were no powers here with such strength. And yet, the readings were real. Warships, dozens of classes, many unknown, pouring out of slipstream like a storm breaking over calm water. No transponder codes, another officer said, voice shaking. No hails. No ID broadcast. Zirak finally turned. His calm face hardened. Identify them. Silence. Then, from the comms officer, a whisper. There. Human. Zirak blinked. Humans? From Sol? That is impossible. Sol has no fleet this far out. And even if they did, they lack the coordination for such a force. But the data didn't lie. The ships bore the rough, brutal designs of human engineering, angular, scarred, covered in mismatched armor plates and weapon mounts that looked welded on by hand. Some glowed with bioluminescent strips. Others smoked from recent repairs. None followed formation. They swarmed like angry hornets. Zirak's mind raced. Humans were considered a minor species. Backward. Isolated. Their planet was labeled a death world in xenological archives. A cautionary note about their violent biology and unstable psychology. But they had not been seen in galactic affairs for decades. Most believed they had turned inward, softened by peace. Yet here they were. And they were not peaceful. Raise shields, Zirak ordered. Voice sharp now. Bring all battle groups to full alert. Deploy drone screens. Do not fire unless fired upon. He still believed this could be resolved. Humans were irrational, yes, but they could be reasoned with. Threatened. Controlled. He was wrong. The human fleet did not wait. From the lead ship, a massive black-hulled destroyer with a skull painted on its side, came the first strike. Not with precision lasers or guided missiles. With railgun slugs the size of small cars, fired at near light speed. They tore through hegemony drone screens like paper. 2 patrol frigates exploded before they could even raise their shields. Then came the fighters. Small, fast, and piloted with terrifying aggression. They didn't fly in neat lines. They darted, rolled, and crashed into enemy ships if it meant taking them down. Some carried crude bombs made from repurposed fuel cells. Others launched swarms of microdrones that latched onto hulls and chewed through metal like acid. Chaos erupted. Hegemony ships, built for order and discipline, froze for precious seconds. Their AI combat systems tried to calculate optimal responses, but the humans did not fight logically. They feinted, then attacked from behind asteroids. They used civilian debris as cover. They sent decoy signals that mimicked surrender, only to open fire the moment hegemony vessels lowered their guards. On the sovereign will, Alarms blared. Overseer. The iron resolve is gone. The clear mind is taking heavy damage. Zyrak gripped the railing. Return fire. Target their command ship. But the humans had no single command ship. Their fleet moved as one mind, wild, angry, relentless dot. Then came the boarding parties. Hegemony doctrine considered ship-to-ship boarding obsolete. Too messy. Too inefficient. But humans didn't care. Armored drop pods slammed into the hulls of hegemony cruisers like meteors. Inside, men and women in black and crimson armor cut through bulkheads with plasma torches and charged into corridors with shotguns, flamethrowers, and weapons that fired clouds of neural disruptor gas. They didn't take prisoners. They didn't negotiate. They fought like animals backed into a corner because to them, one of their own was trapped down on that moon. And that was all that mattered. Back on Viridia Prime, deep in the jungle, Captain Rourke and his crew felt the distant thunder of explosions through the ground. They looked up in the sky. Flashes of light bloomed like angry stars. Fire, smoke, falling ships. Tanya whispered, "Is that help?" Myra stared, eyes wide. "That's not help. That's revenge." On the Sovereign Will, Zyrak watched his fleet unravel. His perfect formation was shattered. Ships burned. Communications failed. His officers shouted over each other, panic creeping into their voices for the first time in their lives. He finally understood. This wasn't a rescue mission. This was a message. And the message was simple. Touch one of ours, and we burn your world. Zyrak's calm cracked. Order full retreat. All ships, break orbit. Flee the slipstream. But it was too late. The human fleet had them surrounded. And in the center of it all, the Black Destroyer, the Un's Persephone, turned its main cannon toward the Sovereign Will. Not to destroy it. Not yet. Just to show it could. Zyrak stared at the screen, his belief in order and logic crumbling like ash in his hands. The war, he realized with cold dread, was not over. It had just begun. The jungle floor shook with every distant explosion. Captain Elias Rourke pressed his back against the cool metal of the Iron Sparrow's hull and watched the sky burn. Fire streaked across the atmosphere like falling comets. Hegemony ships, once so proud and silent, now tumbled from orbit, trailing smoke and flame. Some broke apart before they hit the ground. Others crashed deep in the jungle, setting whole forests ablaze. Tanya clutched Myra's arm, her face pale but her eyes wide with something new. Hope. They came, she whispered. Myra didn't answer. She was listening. Beneath the roar of dying ships, she heard something else. Engines. Low, deep, and fast. Not hegemony drones. Something rougher. Human. Rourke turned to the others. Get ready. If they're coming for us, they won't knock. He was right. Minutes later, a shadow passed over the trees. Then another. Drop ships, sleek, black, and scarred, slid through the canopy like ghosts. They landed in a clearing 50 meters away, turbines kicking up mud and leaves. Hatches hissed open. Men and women poured out. They wore armor black as night, with red stripes across the chest. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but their movements were sharp, fast, and sure. One of them raised a hand, scanning the jungle with a device that pulsed blue. Rourke stepped out from behind the ship, hands raised. Iron Sparrow crew, don't shoot. The lead soldier stopped. Helmet tilted. Then, with a click, the visor retracted. It was a woman. Her face was lined with old scars, her eyes hard but warm. Captain Rourke? Yes, she gave a short nod. Commander Lin, Soul Fleet, we're getting you out. No questions. No delays. Just action. Behind her, Medics ran forward. One knelt beside Jax, checking his pulse. Another handed Tanya a canteen of clean water. Doc Hoffel was helped to his feet by a soldier half his age, who treated him like a grandfather. Rourke looked around, stunned. "How did you?" "We heard your SOS," Commander Lin said simply. "And we don't leave people behind." She led him to a dropship. Inside, the walls were covered in dents, old bloodstains, and scratched names, tributes to fallen crew. A young pilot turned and grinned. "Welcome aboard, sir. Buckle in. It's about to get loud." As the others boarded, Rourke hesitated. "My ship, it's coming with us," Lin said. "We'll tow it if we have to. Everything you touched is coming home." A strange lump formed in Rourke's throat. He hadn't expected this. Not kindness. Not respect. He'd expected a quick lift and a report. But this was something else up in orbit. The battle raged. Admiral Voss stood on the bridge of the Persephone, watching the hegemony fleet scatter like frightened birds. Most had fled. A few still fought, but without coordination, they were easy prey. His wolves tore through them with cold efficiency. But Voss wasn't done. He turned to his tactical officer. "Deploy the prying canisters." The officer nodded. "Yes, Admiral." Deep in the belly of the Persephone, sealed containers hissed open. Inside, engineered microbes, tiny, harmless to humans, deadly to Viridian biology, were loaded into micro-missiles. These weren't weapons of war. They were messages. The missiles launched silently, slipping past burning wrecks and drifting debris. They targeted only hegemony life support hubs, command stations, and supply depots. Within hours, hegemony crews would begin coughing, then bleeding, then dying. Not from wounds, but from a sickness their bodies couldn't understand. It was cruel. But Voss didn't care. They had trapped humans on a Deathworld moon. They had left them to die. Now they would learn what it meant to face Deathworlders. Meanwhile, Commander Lin's dropship roared into the sky, weaving through falling wreckage. Rourke sat strapped in, watching Viridia Prime shrink below. He could see the fires now, hegemony bases burning, supply lines broken, order collapsing. Lin sat across from him. "You did good, Captain. You rang the bell." "What bell?" Rourke asked. "The one that wakes the wolves," she said with a small smile. "No human dies alone out here. Not while we're breathing." She handed him a datapad. On it was a simple diagram of the hegemony fleet network. Rourke remembered something. "They depend on a central AI," he said quickly. "Calls itself the voice of reason. Runs everything, comms, logistics, even ship controls. But it's fragile. If you hit it with messy data, emotional noise, it glitches." Lin's eyes lit up. "Emotional noise?" Rourke nodded. "Yeah, like old Earth music. War chants, memes, anything illogical." Back on the Persephone, Voss received the intel. He didn't laugh. He just gave the order. Broadcast everything. And so they did, from every human ship. A new signal blasted across the battlefield, not weapons, but sound. A Chinese war drum pounded over comms channels. An old American rock song screamed through enemy speakers. Nigerian folk chants mixed with Russian lullabies. Memes, stupid. Chaotic, human memes flooded the hegemony data streams. Dancing cats. "This is fine, dogs." Grinning potatoes with sunglasses. The hegemony AI, built for pure logic, tried to process it. It couldn't. It short-circuited. Ships froze mid-maneuver. Shields dropped. Weapons powered down. Chaos swallowed what was left of their order. High Overseer Zirak, aboard his fleeing flagship, watched his screens go dark. One by one, systems failed. His officers panicked. Outside, Human ships closed in not to kill, but to herd. To shame. He finally understood. Humanity wasn't just strong. They were unpredictable. Their minds worked in ways no logical being could grasp. They turned nonsense into weapons. They fought for strangers. They valued life, not power. And they had just humbled the hegemony in front of the entire galaxy. Back on the dropship, Rourke closed his eyes. He was exhausted. But for the first time in weeks, he felt safe. Lynn looked at him. What happens now? He opened his eyes and looked out at the stars. Now? We go home. But he knew the truth. This wasn't over. The galaxy had just remembered who humans were, and they wouldn't forget again. The war was over. Not with a treaty. Not with a speech. Just silence. The Viridian hegemony had fled. Their once proud fleet was broken, scattered across 3 star systems. Their command structure had collapsed under the weight of chaos, sickness, and shame. They did not broadcast surrender. They simply vanished into the dark, licking their wounds and whispering a new word in their councils. Deathworlders. On Viridia Prime, the jungle still smoldered in places, but life was already returning. Small green shoots pushed through ash. Birds that had hidden for weeks began to sing again. The native Viridians, safe in their glowing groves, watched the sky with quiet wonder, and in orbit, the human fleet waited. The Uns Persephone hung like a black mountain in space, battle scars gleaming under the twin suns. Around it, over 200 ships powered down their weapons, but kept their engines warm. They were not leaving. Not yet. Inside the flagship's main bay, a small ceremony was being held. Captain Elias Rourke stood at attention, his civilian clothes replaced with a clean Soul Fleet uniform, borrowed but fitting. His face was still tired, but his eyes were clear. Beside him stood Mira, Tanya, Jox, and Doc Hoffel, all alive. All home. Admiral Kalen Voss walked up slowly. His black alloy arm gleamed under the soft lights. In his hand, he held a small bronze medal, simple, unadorned, with only the words, "No one left," etched on the back. He stopped in front of Rourke and held out the medal. "You rang the bell," Voss said, his voice low but firm. And the wolves answered. Rourke took the medal. It was heavier than he expected. "I didn't think anyone would hear," he admitted. Voss gave a small, rare smile. "We always listen." No grand speech followed. No fanfare. Just a handshake, a nod, and the quiet understanding that passed between soldiers who had seen too much and done what had to be done. Later, the crew of the Iron Sparrow were given quarters on the Persephone. Hot meals, real beds, clean air that didn't taste like rust. Tanya cried when she saw a real orange, something she hadn't tasted in months. Doc Hoffel spent hours talking with the ship's botanist about jungle fungi that glowed in the dark. Jox finally slept without nightmares, but the real work was just beginning. Admiral Voss stood in the war room, staring at a star map that now showed Viridia Prime marked with a new symbol, a human shield. Around it, other systems flickered with questions, rumors, fear. The galaxy was watching. For decades, Earth had stayed quiet, hidden, neutral, too busy healing from old wars to join new ones. But the SOS from Viridia Prime had changed everything. It had reminded humanity and the rest of the galaxy who they really were. Now, Soul Command made a choice. From Earth, a new broadcast went out, not just to human colonies, but to every listening post, trade hub, and alien embassy within 50 light-years. It was short, simple, final. No human will be abandoned. No crime against our people will go unanswered. We do not seek war, but if you harm one of ours, you answer to all of us. The message didn't say, Deathworlders. It didn't need to. Everyone knew, across the galaxy, Alien leaders took notice. Some were afraid. Some were angry. But most were simply careful. They remembered the stories. The Scourge Wars. The Battle of Proxima. The way humans fought not for land or power but for each other. And now, they had proof. Back on the Persephone, Rourke stood on a quiet observation deck, looking out at Viridia Prime. The moon looked peaceful now. Safe. Commander Lin joined him, holding 2 mugs of hot synth coffee. "You staying with the fleet?" she asked. Rourke shook his head. "I think I've had enough space for a while. Might go back to Earth. Find a cabin near the sea. Grow tomatoes." Lin laughed. "Tomatoes? After all this?" "Yeah," he said, smiling. "Simple things matter more now." She nodded. "Good. You've earned it." They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. Then, from the ship's comms, a soft sound drifted through the corridor, gentle at first, then clearer. It was a voice, singing an old Mandarin lullaby. Soft, sad, beautiful, but underneath it, like a heartbeat, came the distant rumble of engines, the clank of armor, the quiet laughter of crewmates alive and together. It was messy, human, real. Rourke closed his eyes and listened out in the void. The wolves began to disperse. Some returned to hidden shipyards. Others stayed on patrol near human colonies. The Persephone would remain near Viridia Prime for a time to guard, to rebuild, to make sure the peace held. But the message was sent. The Deathworlders were not gone. They were not tame. They were watching, and they would never let one of their own fall alone again. Far away, on a quiet planet called Earth, children played in rebuilt cities under clean skies. They heard the news. They saw the footage of the fleet. And when they asked their parents, "Are we really Deathworlders?" the adults didn't flinch. "Yes," they said. "And we protect our own." Night fell over the Sol system. Stars blinked awake, cold and distant. But in the dark, human ships moved like shadows, quiet, strong, and ready. The galaxy may have forgotten what humanity was capable of, but it wouldn't forget again.